For viewers out there, this is Henrietta, and she's a Mandela Rhodes Scholar as of 2018, and she's here to give us all the nitty-gritty that we need to make beautiful applications for this scholarship. That, by the way, is going to end on the 20th of this month. So this is like a lifetime opportunity. Pay attention to her and
21st.
flow with the session. Yes. Okay. So
Yeah.
thank you. So Henrietta, could you, like, I don't know, help us, because yeah, I've been through the website. It's there, everything is there. But you know, these things about scholarship like this, it's better to hear from the horse's mouth. So, what is the Mandela Rhodes Scholarship about?
Okay. First of all, just a bit of correction. The deadline for the application is the 21st of April, not the 20th.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. The Mandela Rhodes Scholarship is a scholarship that is built on 4 principles. So there is leadership, there is education, there is reconciliation, and there is entrepreneurship. And it's a unique scholarship in its own way. And the reason it incorporates principles like reconciliation is because if you're very familiar, obviously, you know that, I mean, if you're getting the scholarship, you have to school in South Africa. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay. Permit me to introduce myself. I know you already introduced me, but before we delve in properly, let me just introduce myself. Yeah.
Please do. Take your time.
Okay. Yeah. Hi everyone. My name is Henrietta Iyede, and I'm a Mandela Rhodes alumna from the class of 2018. I applied for the Mandela Rhodes Scholarship in my final year in the University of Port Harcourt, and I applied. I went through a rigorous selection process, was selected, and I joined the class of 2018. I studied at the University of Cape Town. I did my master's at the University of Cape Town. Okay, back to what the Mandela Rhodes Scholarship is. So, as I mentioned before, that if you're familiar with South Africa has, in quotes, a bruised history, right? We know the story about apartheid and the story about apartheid, Black people, white people, and that whole background. And so, in the present South Africa, there's a need to reconcile all of those grievances, right? There's a need to, and that's what someone like Nelson Mandela stood for, right? So he was one of the people who was one of the Black people that worked to liberate the country. This is not a South African history class or anything, just a little background into why reconciliation is part of the principles that the scholarship is built on because of the South African history. And so the Mandela Rhodes is, Mandela is the patron of the organization, so to speak, right? He's the founding father of the organization. And so they try to embody all the qualities that Nelson Mandela himself embodied. And the MRF house, if you get chosen for the scholarship, you get to spend some time in the house that Nelson Mandela lived in when he was alive and in Cape Town. So there's a lot of rich history, yes. There's a lot of privileges that comes with being a Mandela Rhodes Scholar. There's a lot of opportunities, there's a lot of perspectives it opens you up to. And so for me, it's been a life-changing opportunity. I mean, experiencing that, even though of course, right now I'm back in Nigeria and working here. But the scholarship, yes, it's built on 4 principles. Education is a huge part, which is why they sponsor your graduate studies in South Africa, which is the education part of it. So they're really looking for potential, right? So they're not looking for people who are already there, in quotes, right? They're looking for people who want to be there and who have started, making the effort to be there. So what they are really looking at is they're looking for potentials, which is why it's open to final year students and people who have graduated, right? Because at the point where you're in final year, there's a lot of things that you do not have figured out, right? But the scholarship also helps to appreciate the efforts that you make as an undergraduate into building community, into making an impact into your immediate environment, right? So all of those things are the things that they consider in their decisions to say, oh, this person is the potential African leader. This person has in the next few years, this person will be one of the next big things in the world or the next big names in the world, right? So I think potential is the key thing that the scholarship actually looks out for. And I've tried to break down this presentation into 3 parts, which cover 3 parts of the application. So there's the part where you write a personal statement. Then there's a recommendation part where you have recommenders. You nominate 3 people to write you a recommendation and why you should be selected as the Mandela Rhodes Scholar. And then the last part is the part where you get to write an essay on a given topic. So they give you a topic and you're supposed to write on that topic based on the word limits, what count or word limits that the year permits. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier that I applied for the scholarship in my final year and I won the scholarship in December 2017. But it was a long process. So there are three levels of review before a final interview, which is in Cape Town. So there's so many perks that come with it, right? So if you eventually scale through, you get to be interviewed in Cape Town, all expense paid. All expense paid, covered by the foundation, yes. And so that's where, okay. Application first before we get to the interview stage. So the first level of application, of course, is where you fill in your details. And so if you're thinking of applying, right, I think one of the first things you should actually do is to think of your recommenders, right? Who's going to write your recommendation? Because as we know, the people who typically write these recommendations are people who are very busy individuals, maybe an executive or a young professional or a lecturer. So these people have really busy schedules. And because you don't have luxury of time, so it would take time for them you have to prompt them, follow up with them for them to actually write their recommendation, right? And actually put it in for your deadline. Because without the recommendation, you cannot submit your application. So even if you have everything in check and one of your recommenders is not able to put in your recommendation before the deadline, then you won't be able to submit your application and all that effort is wasted. So the first thing, once you decide to apply for the scholarship, you look at the eligibility criteria and you think you're a good fit. The next thing you have to do is to reach out to people who you think should recommend you. And I'll get to the recommendation part just in a bit. So the personal statement. So once you fill in those preliminary information, your transcript, a lot of information they ask. Your transcript is one of the documents you're going to upload, your ID and all that. And I think there's something I should stress. Personally, I made a first class from university, right? But I also know people who got the scholarship who did not make the first class. So it's not. So if you're thinking of applying and you don't have a first class, maybe you're in 2-1. There are a lot of other qualities. Education, your academics is great, right? It's one of the things they consider, but it's not the only thing they consider, right? So if you think you don't have a first class, you're not on a first class, don't write yourself out. Don't write yourself off. Don't write yourself off. Still apply if you have maybe a high 2-1, a 2-1, whatever it is, right? And there are other qualities that can make up for that gap in your grades. Please do apply, because your academics is not the only thing that they consider for the application or for the scholarship, right? So, and then if you also, for final year students, of course, your transcript will not be ready by now, right? So, as I said, I applied with my final year. And so what I used to apply instead of my transcript was my statement of results. So I uploaded my statement of results from my first year up until, it was in my first semester of my final year that I applied. So my first year to third year results, my statement of results, my department had this website where, we had that sort of statement of results. So I just printed that, and it's permissible by the scholarship, right? Because they know that you only get a transcript after you've graduated. And so for a final year student, just putting a statement of result up until your final year grades, and they will consider it. Of course, when you get admission into the school, then you can upload your final transcripts, right? Okay. So once that is done, once you've gotten your statement of results ready, you've answered all the preliminary, putting all the details of yourself and all that, one of the 2 essays you would write would be the personal statement. And it's called a personal statement for a reason. As during my time as a Mandela Rhodes Scholar, and which is something that constantly resonates with the foundation, is the foundation values storytelling, right? And this reflects in all of the workshops, because as a scholar, there are 3 workshops you would engage in a year. There are 3 workshops, and in all of these workshops, right, the quality of storytelling keeps coming out, right? This is something that it's a really great tool that the foundation uses a lot, and this is something that you should use when you write a personal statement. It's a personal statement for a reason, right? So it's an opportunity for you to tell your story, right? You've gone through the website, you've seen the values that the Mandela Rhodes wants. So how do you tie your story to show that you embody these values that the foundation is looking out for, right? You embody these values. And so in writing a personal statement, I'm just going to give like I think 4 outlines on how to travel when you start writing your personal statement. The first thing you need to do is to introduce yourself, obviously. Again, storytelling. There are different ways you can introduce yourself. You can decide to go through the regular, my name is this, my name is that, or you can decide to tell a personal story from your personal experience, right? That shows who you are, that tells who you are. So you introduce yourself, your background, your name, and then you move on to, you can even talk about your family, right? There are a lot of people whose family has inspired their journeys, right? Where they are, where they want to be, has been hugely inspired by their family, right? This is something that you also need to show if that's you also need to show this in your personal statement, right? In your personal statement. And then you move on to your educational progression. How have you progressed? Secondary, university, have there been things in that academic progression? Did you move from one course of study to another? So all of these are part of your personal story, right? These are the things that you should also include in your, of course, there's a word limit. So you have to be very prudent with your words, of course, in telling your story. And so if you are not a student, you're a young professional, right? You also have to detail your career progression, right? So you move from here, you've worked so and so place, you've moved from maybe one career path to another. And ultimately, right, the essay you write, your personal statement tells one story, right? The story of what maybe your tells one story, right? But in that one story, there are many themes, right, that still point to that central theme, which is what you're trying to sell, to say, okay, this and this has happened, and this is why I believe that I'm a good fit for this scholarship. This is why I believe that I should get this scholarship, but this is how I believe that I should be a recipient, or I should benefit of the scholarship, right? In that story. And so once you've detailed your educational or career progression, depending on what stage you are at, and then the next thing you do is to tell your motivation for applying to the scholarship. As I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of things that there are a lot of reasons why people want to further their education, right? Why you want a master's degree or whatever it is, right? There are a lot of reasons, right? So what is that? What is the motivation? What is motivating you to? Is there a problem you need to solve in your community that you think that getting a postgraduate degree would empower you the more, or would equip you the more to solve that problem, right? Is there, and it doesn't have to be creating a cure for HIV. It doesn't have to be eradicating poverty from Nigeria or from the entire world, right? Another thing that the foundation values is the value impact, no matter how little it is, right? And I think that this is something that a lot of people mistaken when they are applying for scholarships, right? You're always, people are usually just thinking about the big stuff they've done. Oh, did you save 1 million lives today? Have you saved 1 million lives? Have you helped 1,000 students out of poverty and all that? I mean, all of that stuff is good. It is great if you have that. But do not write off the little impact you've done, even if it's just in your community. If you have 50 students or 20 students that you are actually impacting their lives daily, whether it could be from maybe a social project. It could be that maybe you are helping the girl child with menstrual health. But no matter how little it is, right? Which is why I said storytelling is important. It depends on how you tell your story. There's this popular saying that if you don't tell your story, other people will tell it for you, right? So it depends on how you tell that story of impact, right? No matter how little it is, this is something that the foundation values, right? Whether it's impact on a larger scale or at a smaller scale, it is relevant. So don't write anything off, right? So your motivation, right? What has shaped your worldviews? Where you are at now, where you are at now, where you want to go. What are those things that have shaped your worldview that you believe that, oh, the opportunities this scholarship gives you, the network, the degree, the exposure. So what are those things that you think that you would need these 3 things that I've mentioned to achieve? That's a motivation for why you want to be selected as a scholar, right? You need to detail that in your personal statement. As I mentioned earlier, it could be your family, it could be it could even be a personal trauma, a trauma that you've experienced in the past, right? That has now inspired you or pushed you into becoming someone that, your future self will be proud of, right? All of these things are really important. It's a personal statement for a reason, right? It's unique to you, your experiences. So you need to tell it in the most compelling way. And then you state your future ambitions, right? I work in consulting, so I'm going to be using some consulting terms, right? So your ambition is like, what you want to become, or your goal, basically. And in this, it's also where you also talk about your value proposition, right? Of course, it's supposed to be a mutually beneficial experience, right? Because you're going to, when you get chosen, you're going to connect with scholars from different parts of the continent, right? Different parts of the continent, right? And so there has to be something valuable that you bring to the table, right? Whether it's your background, whether it's your degree, whether it's your network, there must be something that you bring to the table, which is why you believe that you have that potential, right? So your personal statement is also an opportunity for you to sell yourself, right? It's an opportunity for you to sell yourself. Taken from your personal experiences, as I already mentioned earlier. So it's through that statement that you tell the foundation what your value proposition is, what you're bringing to the table. You've done this, you've done that. This is how I believe that it will be a mutually beneficial relationship with other scholars, right? They impact you and you also impacting them likewise. And then the big question is, how does your ambition benefit Africa? Because remember, I said that they're looking for potential global leaders, right? Potential global leaders. So whatever it is that you want to, whatever problem you want to solve, whatever it's your ambition, right? How does that benefit Africa in the future, right? Because they want to train people, they want to raise, leaders who tomorrow would be the next big thing in different spheres of life, right? People who are impacting their worlds in different levels. And so, one of the qualities of a leader actually is being selfless, right? So you're not thinking just for yourself, you're thinking for other people. And this is something that Nelson Mandela in his leadership status, this is one of the things that he also embodied, right? So you need to tell them how your ambitions are going to benefit the continent, right? So you get chosen, you get all these opportunities, you get all these resources. So how will your maybe educational ambition, how does that benefit Africa in the next coming years, or how does that benefit your country specifically? Of course, you have to be from an African country to even be eligible for the scholarship, right? So these are the things this is how you shape your personal statement to tell a compelling story. Tell a compelling story on why you should get selected as a Mandela Rhodes Scholar, because you become a Mandela Rhodes Scholar for life. It's a tag, right? That people see you and they say, oh, you're a Mandela Rhodes Scholar, you're a Mandela Rhodes Scholar, and yeah, it's a tag you wear for life. And so it's very important that you tell a compelling story, because the benefits you get are immeasurable, and I'm a living testimony. And so it's there's so much. I can talk about the benefits for a whole day. I will still be done. So it's a really, really huge opportunity, and I would advise anyone to apply. And then the next thing is your personal statement, and also very importantly, always give other people to review your essays, right? Because to critique your essay, right? When you write something, when you have another eye look at it, you get a different perspective or how to improve that a certain part of the essay, how to modify it, and all of that. So it's very important that you give at least 2 people to review your essays, right? And it doesn't have to be. If you have access to top people, maybe previous scholars, as much as possible, have them review your essays. That's also another very important point, because the person who introduced the scholarship to me was a scholar from 2017, right? In university, I used to be a debater, and I got the opportunity. I learned about the scholarship through one of the West African debaters who was, not in my university, another university. And so I had to, that scholar had to help me with my essays. She read my essays a couple of times. And because these people have gone through that process, right? So it's easy for them to spot things that you need to improve on, or areas that need more work or less work, or things that you need to downplay, or things that you need to emphasize more. So try as much as possible. Nowadays, there's LinkedIn. You can always search Mandela Rhodes Scholars on LinkedIn, and you will have a couple of names. Whoever is available to review your essay, always try to reach out to previous scholars to review your essays before you submit your application. So once your personal statement is good to go, the next thing is your recommendation. As I said, the first thing you need to start doing, even while you're writing your essays, keep sending your recommenders reminders of the application deadline and all of that, so that your recommendation will not be the reason you're not able to submit your application. And how to choose a recommender, very important. Your recommender should be someone who can speak to your abilities, who knows you and your abilities, that can speak to this to a large extent, right? It doesn't have to be a big name, right? I know this is also something people want to have a CEO of one large organization, or the MD of one large organization. Those are great, right? If you have access to those people, fantastic. But your recommender has to be someone who knows you and your abilities and can speak to it to a large extent. And I'll give you a very valid example. In my case, one of my recommenders was one of my lecturers, right? He was our student advisor at the time. He was one of the people who recommended me. And because I was involved in a lot of things as an undergraduate, when I was in my final year, I was president of the debate society in school. So I had gone for a lot of university tournaments that he was aware of, right? Excuse me. So there were times when I also needed to take permission from the department. The department would, permit me to go for some of those things, those representation, right? So in the grand scheme of things, he knew my involvement in school, whether it was student politics, whether it was extracurricular activities, the competitions I was going to represent. So he had all that knowledge. So he was a perfect fit to write me a recommendation. And he spoke about all of his abilities and my involvement in extracurricular activities, because the person who is writing a recommendation now should not only be able to speak to one aspect, right? So if the person knows you to a large extent, the person at least knows little about the things that you're doing, the person has monitored your progress or your growth, right, in certain areas of your life, and can speak categorically to say, oh, this person has shown this person has shown this. Again, as I said, right, they're not looking for people who are already, that's not the point of the scholarship, right? The point of the scholarship is to develop future African leaders, right? So they're not expecting you to come 100%, right? They're not expecting you to have, to come 100% and all that. Then you wouldn't be needing them anyway. So it's a grooming, it's a leadership round that grooms you into becoming the kind of leaders that, the future will be proud of. And so whatever maybe volunteering, whatever extracurricular activities you've done in the past, these things are important. Which is why I said academics is not the only factor they look at. So you've done great in your curricular activities. How about the extracurricular? Because you notice that it's even in the extracurricular activities that you're even able to make these sort of impacts that we're talking about, right? Not necessarily in your classroom, taking your curricular courses or and whatnot, if you understand what I mean. So your recommender should be someone who can speak, who knows you and knows your abilities, that can speak to this, right? So if the person only knows you on a surface level, your recommendation letter will not be deep. And the person has to show that, it has to be deep, right? Because when I applied in 2017, over 9,000 people applied in Africa, right? Across Africa, over 9,000 people. And the scholarship, only less than 1% of people were selected for the scholarship. Fortunately, I was one of them. So it's a competition, right? So you don't just have someone write a recommendation on a surface level. How do you now distinguish if some other person's recommender is going really deep into things they've done, how they've made impact and all that, and then your recommender is only maybe writing a few paragraphs just on the surface level? Obviously, you can tell the difference, right? So the competition is high, and then with each year, of course, application keeps increasing, right? And the scholarship will only take, I think my year in 2017 was even the year when they took the highest number of scholars, right? Since the foundation was established, and we were still less than 1%. So, the number could be lower, right? The number could be lower, and so the competition is really high. So you need to go the extra mile, right? Whether it's a personal statement, it's in your recommendation, the quality of recommendation you get from the recommenders, or even in the essay, which is the next part that I'll be going into. So yes, the person who writes a recommendation, of course, has to introduce themselves, state their relationship with you. In what capacity do they know you? If you're a young professional, if it's your previous boss, in what capacity has this person known you? For how long? Have they known you for? If someone knows you for 2 months, I don't think the person knows enough to write. I don't think the person knows enough to say, oh, you'll be this, because 2 months is just barely enough time to even know someone, right? That's also another thing to consider. So it has to be someone that knows you for at least a year or an extended period of time, that can be able to speak to your progress, right? Whether it's at work or even as a student. So the person has to state, in what capacity they know you, if you've worked with them before, what you guys have done and all of that. I think there are specific questions that they would ask your recommenders once you nominate them. But these are just general knowledge or general information to give to whoever it is you're nominating as a recommender. Okay, yeah. Your recommender should also be able to speak to your achievements. Yes, another thing you also need to include in your personal statement are your achievements. What have you achieved? First, you'll talk about the impact, right? If you've done any, if as a student, if you've done any, you're part of any community club, if you're part of any society where you guys do outreaches, anything, if you're a young professional, maybe you're engaged in volunteering or one volunteering or the other, community development, whatever it is, that could count as an achievement. Please include it in your personal statement. Your recommender should also be able to speak to, these achievements, right? Even though not in detail, but the person should be able to know that, oh, she's done this, she's done this, he's done that, right? And I've seen this person achieve this, achieve that, and all of that. It also speaks to your commitment. That also speaks to you being able to commit, right? Because leadership is a huge commitment, right? If you're not able to commit to the little things, there's really no guarantee that you'll be able to commit to, bigger things or bigger opportunities. And leadership, again, is about commitment. About commitment. And so you would also be asked, the last part, which is the essay part, you would also be asked about an essay, to write an essay. I think it's about 750 words. I'm not really so sure. And I think each year or so, they try to modify the question. In my year, we're asked to write something around the impact of, I think the impact of colonialism and liberation in my country. Something along those lines. Again, right, whatever essay you'll be asked to write would be related to the principles of the Mandela Rhodes Foundation. We've talked about leadership, we've talked about education, we've talked about reconciliation, we've talked about entrepreneurship, right? So whatever essay it is you're going to be writing on, it will be related to the principles of the foundation. So there's a lot of information on the website. Past projects the foundation has done, things that they are involved in and all that. So you need to really spend a lot of time on their website to look at. There are a lot of frequently asked questions for scholars and all of that on the website. So you have to, of course, write a relevant essay, right? So you have to stay on track. Whether they're asking about the impact of something in your country, stay on track, right? And write that in. One other useful tips for your essay would be always use examples, right? If they're giving you a broad topic, right, always to drive the point. Examples are a great way of driving your point home. So use examples from your country, right? If you're saying you're writing an example, or maybe if you're writing an essay on, say, local leadership or whatever, right? Use relevant examples from Nigeria. If you're from Nigeria, talk about, you can even make reference to the 2023 presidential elections. You can talk about previous elections that have held in the past. If you're talking about production, use Nigerian-made producers, like use very local. It shows that you have a lot of knowledge about your country, because ultimately you're going there to represent your country. As a Mandela Rhodes Scholar, what shows there is Iyede, scholar from Nigeria, right? So ultimately you are representing your country. So when you're able to use relevant examples from your country, it shows how much knowledge and how aware you are of the issues that are happening in your country. And I don't think there's anything that's happening on the continent level that we cannot derive examples from in Nigeria locally as a whole. So this is how you distinguish yourself, right? It's okay to speak generally, but again, knowing that this scholarship is based on developing the African continent, it's always good to drive your point home by using local examples from your country. And yes, of course, be mindful of your word limit. If it says 750 words, please do not go overboard. Okay. So I think I've touched on the personal statement, recommendation, and the essays. I think that just great tips that would help you improving your application. Another thing, because I've had a couple of applicants reach out to me on LinkedIn to ask certain questions. Please, the website has a lot of information, right? I don't think it would be fair asking, unless you're asking for clarification, right? But the Mandela Rhodes Foundation website has a lot of useful information for you. But one question that I think I see a lot of applicants asking is the question of if the foundation would apply to a university on your behalf. No. So your scholarship application is independent of your university application, right? So they are going to fund your school, your studies, quite all right, but you have to make an independent application to a university in South Africa. And you can do that simultaneously while you're also applying for the scholarship. But more often than not, the scholarship has a closer deadline than deadline than the university. And so by the time you submit your application, some university applications will still be open. So you have less time for your scholarship application and more time to apply to university. Also, very, 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 very important, apply to more than one university. and I'm going to share a personal story, right? I don't think I've shared this story publicly before, but I'll share it. So during my time, I mentioned that I applied my final year, and there are 3 stages of review: the first, the second, and I think the third. So it's after the third review, when you scale through the first one, scale through the second, you scale through the first. After the third one, that you get invited for an in-person interview in Cape Town. And so while I was applying for the scholarship, of course, I was applying to university. And one of the mistakes I made was I applied to only one university, the University of Cape Town. And that was the only university I was interested in. But it's also good, it's always good, it's always good to have a plan A and a plan B. I applied for 2 different courses in the same university. Unfortunately, I didn't get accepted into any of the courses I applied for. And so what happened was I had a scholarship and I did not have university admission. And so, and if you've gone through the websites, you would already see that you need to get admitted. Otherwise, even if you get accepted for the scholarship and you're not able to get admission, you can't defer the scholarship, and you can't take up the scholarship unless, of course, you have university admission. So in my case, I had a scholarship, I didn't have admission, and the window had closed, right? The window period for university application had closed. And so by the time I started looking into other universities, it was already late. And it was already too late. And so it was a really tough time for me. And so what I had to do was I had to now start emailing specific departments, say, oh, I'm the Mandela Rhodes Scholar elect. And I don't think there's any university in South Africa that doesn't know. So it's a huge thing. It's a household name in South Africa. So by the time I was saying, oh, I had a scholarship, I hadn't gotten that, I want to apply to your program and all that. So I was lucky that there was a department that had their window open. And so I had written to the head of department, and she asked me, oh, you want to do a master's? Do you have a research proposal? I had to do that. My lecturers in uni were very helpful. The same lecturer who wrote me a recommendation, he was very helpful. He helped me. We put together a research proposal I sent to the HOD. And one of the lecturers in the department was interested in my work. And so, because, I already had a supervisor, in quotes, so I had to, they allowed me apply. I think I had just 1 day or 2 to put in that application. So you can imagine how much pressure I was under, because I didn't make plans for what? Plan B. So if I had applied to other universities when I was applying to the University of Cape Town, of course, if the University of Cape Town didn't work, I had like a fallback plan. So please apply to more than one university, because if you get a scholarship and you do not get admission, you would have to forfeit it. And that's just what you don't want to know. You don't want to experience it. I'm not sure anybody wants to experience that. So please, and for Nigerians, there's this thing you have to do where to study in South Africa, some universities will want to evaluate your certificate in Nigeria. They call it SAQA. So all of this information is on the Mandela Rhodes website. So while you're putting your university application, I'm not sure, University of Cape Town doesn't require that, but I know other universities like Wits, I think Wits requires SAQA. University of Cape Town doesn't require it. So if you're looking to go to Wits or University of the Western Cape or Stellenbosch, do your research, ensure that you don't require SAQA. Find out what your requirements for your courses are, apply to more than one university, and put in a very strong application. And as I said, the experience is immeasurable. You get exposed to like minds, a network of other potential leaders. And in the year after your year in residence, you see how your classmates are, they're really doing the things, achieving this, becoming that, and all of that, right? When you have that sort of network, it has a way of motivating you or pushing you to even do more, right? For yourself, for the continent, for your country, and all of that. So it's one of the biggest experiences of my life. And it was life-changing for me because the level of exposure I got, of course, I didn't have that when I was in Nigeria. So it opened up a lot of doors for me. The Mandela Rhodes Scholarship opened up a lot of doors for me. And I'm really grateful that I put in the application. And again, be mindful of the deadline. Another thing I did was, I think I submitted my application a day to the deadline, or even that day, I'm not sure, but it was very close to the deadline. So I also almost missed it by a margin. So please be mindful of your deadline. Chase your recommenders. If you give someone your essay to review, follow up with them. Always follow up with them. Always make sure that the second eye sees your essay. Reach out to previous scholars. I'm sure they would always be willing to help you review your application. From my year in residence, I know that every year some scholars reach out to me to help them review their essays. And if I have the time, I do review maybe one or two. But yeah, I think that's really it. Please do apply. It's fully funded. There's a lot of benefits. You get to attend 3 workshops in a year. 3 workshops where you have really reputable speakers come to speak to you about a lot of things. It's a mind-blowing experience, really. So I would definitely advise anyone who meets the requirements to please put in an application and hope for the best.
Thank you very much. Such a wonderful session that we have there. I wasn't expecting this much, honestly speaking, but that's a double backup. So President of Literary and Debating Society and also a first class graduate. If I were to be on that panel list, definitely you'll be my #1 candidate. Now I know the reason why you're chosen.
I doubt it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for stressing the deadline, because it's just one thing that we get every now and then from different scholars advising people, please pursue the deadlines. Make sure you don't go under the same pressure. So yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I also saw a lot of FAQs on the website. It was quite like, I've yet to see a scholarship with so many questions already answered on the website. So yeah, it saves people like you. So I will not kill you with questions. But
Yeah.
There is something that I said about a 2 years master's and a 1 year honors. What do they mean by a 1 year honors program?
Okay, so in South Africa, I think they follow I think they do it in the US too. The educational system is structured like the US, where your bachelor's is 3 years. So we in Nigeria, our educational system is structured like that of the UK, right? So in Nigeria, we have a 4 years bachelor's degree. But in South Africa, so in your final year, you write a full project, and a full project. But in South Africa, their bachelor's degree is a 3-year program. So in your 3rd year, which is your final year of bachelor's, you don't have a project like we do in Nigeria. So the 1 year, which we use as final year for the regular degree, where you have where you write a thesis or a project, as we call it in Nigeria, that year is considered another degree in South Africa, which is what they call an honors degree. So that's the 4th year of your education, right? And it's in that degree that you now write a thesis or a project. So the foundation also, because it's considered a postgraduate degree in South Africa, right? Which is why the foundation says, they sponsor you for a 2 years master's or a 1 year honors program, because both honors and masters are both postgraduates.
Okay, thank you very much for clarifying that. Okay, that's actually one of the very basic questions. Thank you for going through the application documents. I wanted to ask about CV, but from the way you explained it, it's like there's really no need for us to dwell on it, since it probably wasn't requested, right? A CV.
I don't remember submitting one. I think there are a couple of questions we will answer again, also because it's open to final year students, right? But again, I mean, I applied way back in 2017. So I'm not sure if, it's a requirement now. So whoever is applying, if it's a requirement, of course, you have to pick up your CV and make it relevant. But I don't know if that's a requirement. I really can't remember vividly if I submitted a CV. But if it's something that is required now, of course, you have to beef up your CV to be up to date and, of course, relevant. So yeah, that shouldn't be a problem, of course. For young
Exactly.
for young professionals and for young professionals that are applying, that shouldn't be a big deal. That's not a big deal.
It isn't. It definitely isn't, because usually people that already submit an application for scholarship, a CV is like one of the easiest document that they already have ready.
Exactly.
Okay, so I wanted to ask about the interview. What are the questions you were asked during the interview? Can you remember any? I know it's a long time.
It is a long time. My interview was in December 2017. But essentially it's to so you've written a personal story, which is why I said it's unique to your experience, right? So it's basically to, okay, you've told them this is who you are, these are your motivation, this is that on paper. So it's an opportunity for them to marry what they have on paper and who you present or how you present yourself at the interview, right? So it's not so much of them interrogating your personal feeling, and it's really chilled. It's one of the most chilled interview I have done. Of course, you'll be nervous because this is a global opportunity. This is a global opportunity that you're about to either get or not, right? And so you'll be tense, but they'll make you feel very comfortable. The panelists are maybe previous scholars, panelists are very, very understanding. And so just for them to have an insight into who you presented on paper. So of course, if you've written about your personal experiences or your personal experiences, you'll be consistent with some of the things that they would ask you, right? So yeah, it's really just to get to know you and just because meeting in person is definitely different from just a written essay. So it's to just connect who you are in person with who you presented on paper. And it's very chill.
Wow. Thank you very much. A very brief question again. Is there any advice you have for those that are choosing between, okay, which university should I go for? Should I go for Cape Town? Should I go for this? What are the criteria? If you have not done what you did, we all know what you did now. If you have not done that, what would be your advice to a person that is open on picking some university? What should the person look out for?
And to be honest, the reason I chose University of Cape Town first of all was because the course I wanted to study, they were the best starting in South Africa. I know that apart from University of Cape Town is number one in Africa, it's been number one for a number of years, but that's not all, right? Some of the departments in other universities rank higher. Of course, a lot of people consider ranking, but you also need to, I think the most important thing is to consider what's your cost of study and where it ranks in the continent and even in South Africa generally, right? So you may want to study a course where, that department is currently ranked number one at the University of Johannesburg, or maybe at the University of Western Cape, right? Then go for it. It doesn't have to be UCT, right? It doesn't have to be University of Cape Town. So, the first thing and most important thing you should consider is your cost of study, right? Where does it rank highest in the continent or in South Africa? Because that means that you would have a lot more resources, or you get a lot more value by going to such a university, right? And not just looking for the university that is number one. But again, it's ultimately, the choice is ultimately yours. If you want to consider global rankings first, then that's fine.
Okay. You mentioned about representing Nigeria over there. I have no doubts that you must have been like the perfect face of Nigeria over there. You have qualities, you are a forceful speaker. So
there were other scholars. The scholars from Nigeria in my year were all top people. And it's actually a blessing to have been connected with them. From the scholarship. So they were all top. Of course, the scholarship selects the best of the best, right? So you expect that everyone who's selected for the scholarship is the best, really.
Exactly. So what I wanted to ask is, how was the whole cultural shock and all that? Because you just literally just moved from West Africa down to the very bottom of Africa. So how was it like?
It wasn't easy. I won't lie. It wasn't easy. There were a lot of things that were. I was shocked when they said culture shock. I was shocked, and one of the things that I would never forget. One of the things that stood out was in South Africa. So they refer to traffic lights as robots. Right? Yes, that's very funny. So I would literally be walking, and of course they obey traffic laws, traffic rules, unlike Nigeria. So they are very strict like that. And someone would be saying, oh, maybe someone is giving you directions and just telling you, oh, when you move past the robot to your left. The first guy I heard, I was asking for direction, and the person was saying, oh, there's a when you get to the end of the road, there's a robot. Then you turn to your right, you see, and I just kept saying, okay. I mean, I was expecting to meet a robot, as we know. A robot, as we know, right? As we know. And then I had to ask another scholar who had schooled in South Africa for a year, and then she laughed and said, oh, they're talking about traffic lights. And I'm like, what's the link? Traffic lights, robots. Like, so it was very confusing for me. And I mean, some of this, they give you orientation, of course, but because, I mean, I explained my story that I got my admission late. I think I got my admission because when you get selected, there are 3 workshops that you attend. The first one is at the beginning of the year, which is in January. The second one is mid-year workshop, which is in July. And then the last workshop is in September. So I had gone for the first workshop on a visitor's visa. So I was in Cape Town when I got my admission in January. And I mean, other people had gotten admission from like December, November. So they already knew their fate, right? So I missed like orientation, because they do orientation on campus, right? Which is where some of these cultural discrepancies are sort of like explained. You hear from other people from your countries, you get. So I missed all of that. And so I didn't get that memo. And so I was really shocked, to be honest. So when I had the whole robot thing, it was so very confusing to me. And so when the other scholar and this is it, scholars, we help each other a lot in terms of accommodation, because when you're moving to a new country, of course, you can always link up with, scholars who are South African. They would help you. They would help you with things like accommodation and really help you settle in, right? So that's also another thing. So the Mandela Rhodes Foundation, they give you that sense of family, right? You're away from home, but you're not away from home. So it's a community of people. So that support is there. And this is why, the workshops are also really important for them. It's an opportunity for you to, reconnect with that community, that support that you need. So it was another scholar who now explained to me that, that robot is actually traffic lights. And then she explained to me, and I just felt very foolish, like, what the hell? So I was actually, there are a lot of instances, right? Like it was when I was there that I actually started my blog, detailing all the crazy things I would experience, a lot of the different things, So all of these things was what inspired me to start writing a blog and all of that. So there was a lot of culture shock, but again, because you're not going to be the only scholar from Nigeria, there'll be other scholars from Nigeria, right? So there's also going to be that community. For us, the West African scholars, we had like a very close-knit community. Almost every weekend we would host each other, we would cook. Even the other scholars who were not non-West Africans, always, of course, everybody liked Nigerian jollof. So it was something that we didn't take lightly. So that's that community and that support system, right? So we would always post, and that's how we stayed. That's what kept us sane, right? Because you're away from your family, friends that you've known for a long time. So that community really helped us bond, and it kept us going while our degrees were showing us shaky. So yes, there's that support system.
Wow, that's a very beautiful story you have. So what is your advice to a person who is probably staying in his or her final year? The person is looking out, okay, scholarship should apply for, they're uncertain. What is your advice to them?
I would say you should apply, right? I saw the MRF scholarship, the Mandela Rhodes Scholarship, as a means to an end, right? Because a lot of people would say, oh, after studying in South Africa, which is one valid concern, right? A lot of people want to Japan, they want to go study abroad and all that, right? I think you have to think of, I mean, ultimately, you know what your plans are, right? You know your 5-year goal, you know where you want to see yourself, right? If it fits into your plan, maybe there's a course you want to, please go for it, right? Because for me, it was a means to an end. It wasn't the end for me. It's not the end for me. And since having that scholarship, I have gone on to do a lot of other things, right? And I mean, after your study, you can decide to also go for further studies, maybe a PhD or what, or even go into the industry as I am currently in, as I am, right? So it was I saw it as a means to an end for me and not the end. So I mean, it's a huge stepping stone in terms of your career, in terms of your global opportunities. So please, please, please do go for it, right? And do go for it. And I think things will really align. Things align for me. So I believe, yeah, that things will align. But it's an opportunity it's something that I think
Thank
should
you.
experience. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Henrietta. Thank you for your stories, for your words of encouragement. We really appreciate your time and everything. It took a lot from us to get you here, and thank you for your kind consideration of coming in. For our
You're
viewers out
welcome.
there listening to her, please go and look for our blog and follow it, too. Please, so we'll not get stranded when we get to South Africa.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Thank you. Do have a great night. Bye bye.
Yeah. Bye.